we've done bottom up, we've done multi-body, and now we're going to do top-down assembly. Multi-body and top-down assembly are in effect strategies to increase efficiency, reduce the time to do the modeling, be able to control a lot of geometry, and if we use configurations, I can modify all those parts as a single point. The process then is very similar to the multi-body, but we're going to be creating this geometry, our L shape, our little rectangle if we decide to move away from the whole wizard, which would be a nice contrast to go ahead and build that in. And I'm going to start off with the layout sketch, but I'm going to recommend you watch the entire video because I have had problems with the layout sketch, and I suspect that they have not been completely corrected. So our first step is to go into an assembly. If you want to use the default template, we're going to make sure that it is in metric. If you've created the metric assembly template, then we'll go right into it. And at this point, I don't have any geometry to bring in. I'm going to create it entirely out of this assembly file. If we expand this out for the message, select a component to insert or design top-down using layout with blocks. Parts may then be created from the blocks. So I'm not really interested in the blocks so much. They have some functionality, but I really would lean towards the assembly sketch to act kind of like the multi-body. The other thing to keep in mind is that this layout sketch is a 3D sketch, so this is introducing a 3D sketch. And notice that we have the grid, and if I double click, the grid goes away. If I come back over and double click on the front plane, the top plane, or the right plane, then I will be sketching in those planes. So this is an advantage for top-down because maybe I'll do a box, one of the box examples, being able to navigate through those planes and be able to have access to that different geometry. So in the front plane, if we go to the sketch and a center line, we can still do infinite length. It is not showing vertical though. So not sure exactly which one I picked there. Alright, so Control 1 to rotate into the view, L on the keyboard, and we'll start generating our shapes just like we did in the multi-body. And the little rectangle. The downside to doing this all at once is that I said I was going to let's do that just on the other one part so we can contrast it. So I'll take away that coincident. I guess I'll take care of that coincident too, and we'll make sure that that goes vertical. L on the keyboard to get back into it. All right, so that gives me the shape. We'll see how much adjustment it needs. So we have the M24. Well, let's go with the overall first and see how far off I got. So it's going to about double in size, and that was kind of what I was expecting it to do. And it's always a good example of dragging these items back out to get it to represent what we're looking for. So the 65, and then we had I believe it was 100 millimeters. Double check. Yeah, 100 millimeters on the diameter, 60 millimeters on the interior, so we're still staying in diametral. And then if I hit escape, that'll put me back into linear, and we're going to 13 millimeters on the thickness, 3 millimeters on the gasket, 20 millimeters on the base. And then I'm going to include the tapped hole in the top part. So 24 minus 3, since that was our call out, an M24 by 3, is 21. So that gives us the minor diameter. Right? If we're in the imperial system, then we're going to have to do a little bit more math. All right, so that gives me the layout. Again, I want to include, so this little symbol over here is showing me the layout, and then this is usually where I get myself into trouble, is we haven't done anything really drastic with the 3D sketch, but there comes a point with 3D sketches that adding one more relation, adding one more piece of geometry creates an over-defining condition, and it doesn't seem to matter what you do. It's not going to be happy. So at that point, you close the layout, close the sketch, open up another sketch, and then for whatever reason, the visibility of the layout becomes suspect. So we're going to see if that happens. And I'm going to open up the sketch in the top plane. For our reference then, we'll just pull out the base circle, and that was, just real quick check, 75 millimeters. I want that to be a construction circle, so since there's not a construction circle per se, we just switch it. And then let's see if on the S key, I need to be a little further up. I'm not seeing one. So I've looked for the point twice now. So let's see if I go to view, toolbars. This is kind of the long way because usually I just click in the gray. I'll go all the way down and then customize. I don't want to customize the menu. We go to the commands, and I'm looking for the sketch tools and the points. Now somewhere I should be seeing the S keys. There we go. So shortcut bar. So it's in the wrong one under the commands. And if I go locate the point, we can put it kind of down at the bottom. The other thing is if I want this to be more rectangular, maybe for this screen size, I can grab that box and move it a little bit to change its size. All right, so now I have the point. We'll put it on the quadrant. I saw a little coincident and a vertical line in the yellow box, so I got the existing relations. We'll go ahead into the sketch and circular sketch pattern. We had 8 of these. And got our pattern. So notice that there is the 9th point. So that might be the advantage of it not going fully defined, is that I can get rid of that 9th point. And that would become an instance count if this was in the hole wizard and applying the geometry to that to those sketch points. Since this is just in the layout sketch, or a sketch for the sketch pattern or a feature pattern, or utilizing it to apply the hole wizard, it's a little more visible. So if I bring that back to the quadrant, it goes in one relation. If I undo that real quick and we come off of the quadrant, notice that it starts, and that one will stay, and a third one, because our first was the seed instance. Now we have those in place. Alright, so at this point I can hide the layout, and the sketch would be the hole locations. So I name that. And if there was going to be a problem, it would usually occur about now. So the other option then is I do not have to use the layout. I can just use to sketch, and I would sketch on the front plane. But just that real quick introduction to the 3D sketch and starting to utilize it just a little bit. All right, so that gives us our geometry. And before we create a new part, before we do anything else, we do not want this to be tied to a Sim 1. So we must save it, rename it. Renaming it is more difficult than it's worth usually, but it is certainly possible. So we're going to have virtual components, at least initially. So maybe it's not that bad, but it's a lot better when you remember to get the top-down assembly file named very first thing. All right, so this is the pressure cylinder. Because I do want to do the renaming, except for this one. We'll revisit that, but I'm going to put a I think I did caps on the multi-body, so I'll do caps for top-down. All right, so this stage, instead of going into my next sketch, I'm actually creating the parts. So the reason that we go right to the assembly and bypass making parts is we are, in effect, insert component, new part. It's going to ask me where I want to place the front plane, but I don't always want to place the front plane there. So I typically just hit escape, and that puts my part 5, so whatever we just did, in the brackets. So this does not exist outside of this assembly. It is a virtual component. So this is going to be the chamber base chamber. And we'll go ahead and accept it and expand it out, and there's no geometry in there because we need to edit this in context. So when I edit this part, everything goes into blue. It shows me the geometry. I'm going to select a sketch on the front plane, and the reason that I hit that escaped out of that check mark is whatever I select becomes the front plane. So if I was to select the top plane of the assembly, that would be the front plane of the part, and that always confuses me a little bit. So I'd rather just not deal with it, escape out of it, and then when I go into the assembly, the front plane of the assembly is aligned to the front plane of the part. So we open up a sketch, and then we can convert entities. So if you want to select, Control Select, I'll make sure I'm not getting my circle there. And I'm just going to go through the layout. And the technique for the blocks is similar, but I like to use the blocks more for maybe the motion capabilities than for generating the parts. So there is my geometry. We go into the features, we tell it to revolve. The axis of revolution, we'll see if we can pick it out of the sketch. So it's not happy with that one, so we'll just pick one of the sketch entities. Goes 360 degrees, and that puts us to where we can hit the S key, go to the hole wizard. This is going to be a tapped hole. It is metric. We're going to navigate back to the M8 by 1.25. So those are what was called out. It's not going to be up to next. The thread engagement. So it's showing in inches. Oh, I am in inch, pounds, and seconds. So the assembly that I opened is in metric. So That could be an issue, especially if that's 100 inches large. All right, so let's go 17 millimeters on the thread depth, let it update. We'll pick our first position, and we'll see what the default assembly look like. All right, so I may have been saved by the assembly being in metric. So let's just go ahead and we'll place those points. Again, if you didn't just do the modification to the S key, we can always do the sketch tools. So this is kind of the long way. Sorry, sketch entities. And we would find our point. We can right click and sketch entities to point, and then from the sketch command manager point. Right, so many ways to pick, and then I can just make coincident on each of those. I could also generate the first item, need one there, and make it a feature pattern. All right, so I would like to have the M24 in the direction of the base, so I'll start it on the outside of the part and go in. And this is specifically important if it was going to be the tapered and NPT geometry. So we're going to scroll down until we see the M24 by 0.3. Place its position at the center, and OK. Right, so that is our first virtual component inside of our top-down assembly. I'm going to pause the video here, and then we will pick up with the gasket and the top.